All right, folks and media and fans sleep on South Carolina all the time, but could South Carolina have the number one overall draft pick back-to-back seasons over the next 2 years? I don't think it's far-fetched at all. Locked On Gamecock starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marlar. I hope everyone's having a fantastic Wednesday. Short week. We got Memorial Day on Monday, and it's now a short weekend. It's officially the summer. But we got a great show for you today. Before we get started, I want to say thank you to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go ahead and do us a favor. Drop a 5-star review. Drop a follow on the YouTube channel. It would be great for everyone involved. We appreciate it. But I hope everyone's having a good Wednesday. Like I said, got a good show for you today. And I'm excited about this. I was talking about this the other day because it feels like South Carolina, you guys have warned me about this for over the year, for the last year that I've been doing this. It's just this constant being slept on that happens to South Carolina no matter what. And I don't even know if this thing I'm going to propose, this idea that I'm going to propose and thing that could potentially happen would change it, but I would think it would. And I don't think it's that far-fetched. And the question was brought to me the other day. They said, who would be your QB1 going into the next season? Obviously, in the SEC, it's LaNorris Sellers. I think nationally, I think Cade Klubnik's a great quarterback. I would have him up there with Sellers, maybe Nussmeier. But if we're picking between Nussmeier and Sellers, especially at the next level, I have a very hard time trying to comprehend why Nussmeier has gotten the nod over Sellers repeatedly. It would be, for me, and you can call me biased all you want, but I think Sellers would be your number one pick if he has the season like we saw for all 12 to hopefully 15 games this year. If he has that kind of season, like he did the last 6 games of the regular season last year. And going further, then you start thinking, like it brought up to me, like if he goes number one overall, if that somehow happens, you're in line the next season to do it back-to-back. Because Dylan Stewart is already being talked about as the most disruptive, the most physically talented, the biggest physical freak defensive player in the country. Now, listen, I think Caleb Downs is the best defensive college football player in the country. He's also not in the same draft class as Dylan Stewart. He also plays a much different position. And he also plays a position that would never be drafted number one overall anymore. That's the other important part. LaNorris Sellers and Dylan Stewart play the most important positions on the field. And they play, more than anything, the most important positions and most consistently picked positions in the NFL draft. You look over the history of the NFL draft, and I can bring it up right here. 26 of the last 28 number one overall picks in the NFL draft have been either a defensive end or edge rusher or a quarterback. 8 of the last 10 have been have fallen in line with that. You've only had 2 tackles that have been chosen number one overall in the last 28 years. If you want to expand it even further, you only have 3 of the last 29. One of those is Orlando Pace, who was a can't miss, prospect from like 1997 from Ohio State. The other 2, Jake Long from Michigan, and then Eric Fisher, the kid out of Central Michigan that went to the Chiefs in 2013. Everyone else has been a quarterback or defensive end. Then you want to look at some of the, if you want to primarily focus on Stewart, the only 3 defensive ends that have been chosen number one overall over the last 11 years, they all come from current SEC schools. I mean, every year in, year out, the SEC has the highest amount of draft picks, and that is not anything different usually when you see from number one overall picks. Now, last year, year before, you had 2 guys that came from, one from the ACC, one came from the then Pac-12. But here's the thing. Going back to this year, LaNorris Sellers is finally being talked about with how I think that, like from scouts, which is the important thing. We get lost in the shuffle of this idea when we talk to like media and fans, and they get enamored with, 1, their own players, and then 2, the guys that they think like fit their idea of what a quarterback should be. That's what Nussmeier is. Like, Nussmeier is a good quarterback, But if you watched any of his games, and I had to watch a lot of them last year for for my main job, under pressure, Garrett Nussmeier folds. I said it yesterday on our squad show. It's IKEA furniture. It folds under pressure. Okay, that's the opposite of what LaNorris Sellers does. And I don't think it's because of the Illinois game. I don't know if it's because they got left out of the playoff or what. But for whatever reason, people really tend to forget that the last 6 games of last year, LaNorris Sellers and South Carolina had the longest active winning streak of any team in the SEC when they won 6 straight, beat 4 ranked teams out of their 6 games, and LaNorris Sellers had 17 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. And the thing I brought up about Nussmeier, which is arguably what you want most out of a quarterback you're drafting first, how is he under pressure? Is he a leader of men? Does he command the huddle? Obviously the physical intangibles, but how does he perform under pressure? If you compare those two side by side, you can take all the stats you want. Nussmeier was in an offense that threw the ball more than anyone else in the country. 544 attempts last year, I believe. But they threw the ball more than any other team in the entire country. That's not what Sellers did. That's not what Dowell Loggins did. That's not what he's going to do this year. But when you talk about what both of those players do when it matters most, under pressure, LaNorris Sellers, when he's on the field, I don't think it's even that crazy of a thing to say, is the best quarterback in the country. I tell you what, he does more and can do more than any other quarterback in the country. Cade Klubnik, great quarterback. 35 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in the regular season last year. Cade Klubnik can't run like Sellers, doesn't have the same decision-making skills like Sellers, and also didn't play anywhere close to the strength of schedule that Sellers played last year. That guy was 0-3 against SEC teams last year. 0-3. Sellers was much, much better against teams and superior opponents. You talk about Carson Beck, horrible decision-making under pressure last year. Saw it against Bama, saw it against Florida, saw it multiple. Ole Miss. I mean, you talk about 3 games there where he had double-digit interceptions combined in those games. Sellers is better than that. Now, we saw him go through some growing pains early, but the one thing I think that is going to stand out more than anything when you talk about what these 2 players specifically, but I'll start with Sellers. When they are on the field, they are the best player on the field. This is a big thing. I used to say this all the time when you talk about Jalen Milroe when he was at Alabama 2 years ago, I was covering them. The problem with not starting him, even though he had a lot of limitations in the passing game, is the moment he steps on the field, he's the best athlete on the field. So it's hard to figure out how to not play him. The moment LaNorris Sellers steps in between the white lines, he is the best player on the field. The only time you could even argue that happens and he's not is when he does it in practice and goes up against Dylan Stewart, because when Dylan Stewart steps on the field on defense, he is the best player on the field, most physically talented, most physically gifted, and most disruptive pass rusher in the country. And he's just a sophomore. So we'll get more to Stewart in the second part of the show. But with Sellers especially, you hear this constantly. And I think that it's something South Carolina fans should kind of take note of, because it is, listen, I have finally gotten it. It feels like there's almost nothing he could do to be like you saw it last year with the playoff committee. It feels like there's almost nothing you can do for anyone to take notice sometimes. This program has done a tremendous job of being able to develop players, win games they're not supposed to. I mean, guys, A&M was 7-1 on a top 10 team last year when they came to South Carolina. South Carolina boat raced them. I mean, it was similar, in the type of beatdown at least, to the Tennessee game in 2023. They didn't score as many points, but a 24-point win over a top 10 opponent, ran them out of the building. LaNorris Sellers is at the forefront of why that happened, and he's at the forefront of why those last 6 games all resulted in a W next to the win column. I'll tell you this. All of the fans, local media, national media, that for the most part, I wouldn't say sleeping on Sellers, but have him behind Nussmeier, have him behind guys like Cade Klubnik, and have him behind guys like DJ Lagway, who has the least amount of starting experience besides Arch Manning, who both seem to be ahead of Sellers when you see all these preseason rankings. The people that matter in terms of eyeing this, scouts, NFL analysts, NFL execs, front office guys, they all see what we see. And Sellers is a bona fide option as a number 1 overall pick in this next year's draft. When we come back, I'm going to tell you what a back-to-back number 1 draft pick could look like for South Carolina in the football program, and why Dylan Stewart is also deserving of that hype as soon as we return. Before we do, I want to give a shout-out to our friends at FanDuel. You guys have heard me talk about FanDuel before. You're going to hear me talk about them again, as I always say, and there is no better time than right now than to get in on the action with FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full action. An incredible game last night with the Pacers and Knicks. Tyrese Halliburton was incredible and went over pretty much every single prop bet he had with his incredible triple-double. But every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Now, like I said, I love the player props more than anything. Get in there on how many points a player's going to score, how many threes they're going to score. I don't even know what the number is for tonight's game or the game, game 5 between OKC and Minnesota, but take the over for Ant-Man because I think he's going to deliver. Regardless, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Locked On Gamecocks continues with more right after this. Okay, we're back. And just talk about, the potential of what this could do. And listen, I know that it's the offseason, so we have offseason talking points, all that kind of stuff. And I know that, one of the things that comes along with that is, sometimes getting ahead of our skis and making projections or picks and prognostications for a bigger word that I know how to spell on what we could potentially see in the upcoming season or season after that. But again, this doesn't feel like it's that far-fetched. And I think that when you talk about – Pepper's awake. When you talk about a number 1 overall pick, we've seen it before with South Carolina. They have 2, right? George Rogers was number 1 overall pick back in – let me make sure I have the number correct here – 1981 to the Saints. And then, sorry, there's a lot of water noise in the background. Pepper is very thirsty. Long walk this morning. And then obviously Jadeveon Clowney in 2014 going number 1 overall to the Houston Texans. So in the same vein, when you talk about Clowney was a physical freak from the day we first saw his high school film. Stewart wasn't the number 1 overall player in the country like Clowney. However, he was a former 5-star that when you talk about projection-wise, I think that we could see a similar career at South Carolina. With Clowney, it was interesting because when Clowney was in college, you saw a little bit of a dip, right, in his production because you went 8 sacks his freshman year, 13 his second year, and then 3 in his third year. You talk about the tackles for loss, 12, 23.5, then 11.5 in his final year. More than anything, the disruption with the forced fumbles, 5 in his first year, 3, and then 1. A lot of people, he's being double and triple teamed by the time he's a junior and draft eligible. Dylan Stewart feels like a guy that his freshman year burst onto the scene because of how much production he was able to have in his first several games, not just with sacks and getting to the quarterback, but also in forcing fumbles, being disruptive in the passing game and disruptive in the running game. But as we know, especially at this position, you don't always have to have a ton of production to be the number 1 overall pick. Take a look at Trayvon Walker. Trayvon Walker is a kid that came out of Georgia and was just a part of their rotation. He was technically not even a starter over his couple seasons at UGA, played in every single game, right? But that was only in his last game his last season at Georgia. Before that, he only played in 21 combined games in his first and second year. He only finished with 9.5 sacks. He finished his junior year when he was the number 1 overall pick with 9.5. I'm sorry, with 6 total sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss, 2 pass deflections, and a fumble recovery. That's a lot less production than I feel like we've already seen from Dylan Stewart and a lot less disruptiveness than we've already seen from Dylan Stewart. The thing that I like most about what Dylan Stewart is going to be able to do is grow. And that sounds dumb a little bit, like because it's just so simple. But him growing, you remember last year when Dylan Stewart came in as a freshman, Dylan Stewart came in, he was 6'5", 225, 228, right around there. And he was kind of a lanky guy. There was some people that thought, like, I don't know if he's going to get on the field because he's 6'5", 230, 225, like I said. How is he going to go up against 6'7", 6'6", 6'5", 330-pound grown-ass men playing left and right tackle in the SEC? Well, we saw firsthand that he was able to do it, but also the fact that he was able to get in the weight room early because he came into the early signing period and got on campus early, was able to put on 20 pounds that, I hate to say this because you can only put on 5 pounds of actual muscle a year, but he was able to put on 20 pounds of lean mass, we'll call it, going into his freshman season. So in just that spring and summer, he was able to get in the weight room, put on a bunch of weight, ideal weight. That frame is going to be able to hold at least 270, 280 pounds, right? And will probably continue to be as explosive as he's around the 265, 270 range. Kyle Kennard last year, a little bit shorter than Dylan Stewart. I think he was listed at 6'5" in the media guide. Probably he was closer to 6'4" at the NFL Combine and Senior Bowl and all that kind of stuff. 254 pounds. Now, Kyle Kennard's great, but they are built differently. And you look just at them physically, like Stewart will put on weight. Stewart will end up being, I think, probably at least 10 pounds heavier by his junior year than Kyle Kennard was going into this past or playing this last season. And that's perfect. And you look at the types of players that have gone number one at this position. Myles Garrett, physical freak. I don't know if Stewart is capable of that. Stewart's also only 19 years old, right? Trayvon Walker, physical freak. I don't know if he's going to have the same kind of combine as Trayvon Walker. Again, he's only 19 years old. Like, we are scratching the surface, right? We're scratching it violently, but we're scratching the surface with this kid's potential. So to look at the next year, and listen, it's early in the year. We're talking about kids that have just finished their freshman and sophomore year that are going to be draft eligible next year. I don't know what else and who else is going to be projected around him. I don't know if there's a kid at Texas or LSU or Florida State or wherever, Ohio State, that is going to compete for that number one spot. I do feel very confident in saying it is going to be a quarterback or it's going to be a defensive end. And when you have a kid, and you've seen this before already, there are several different sites that have like projected him to be a top 2 pick. Jeremiah Smith is the best player in the country, in my opinion. But we have not seen a wide receiver go number 1 overall in the draft. Let me make sure I have this right. Since I believe it was Keyshawn Johnson. Yeah, 1996. We have not seen a receiver go number 1 overall in the draft since 1996. If you want to keep going back in the history of the NFL draft, we have only seen a total in the last 65 years, 3 total receivers. 3, that's it. So going number 1 overall as a receiver, like, listen, I think Jeremiah Smith is worthy of the 1-1 pick. But not everyone needs a receiver. And getting to the quarterback is arguably more important than trying to catch balls from the quarterback. Like Justin Jefferson's a phenomenal talent. Jamar Chase, phenomenal talent. There's receivers all over the league that are you could go back in a redraft and say, yeah, that guy should have been higher or whatever. But at number 1 overall, it hasn't happened, historically speaking, hardly ever. 3 times in the last 65 years, and it hasn't also happened in the last 30 once. So if that's the case, and you talk about like you'll see the big board of like who's the best player, the best player will probably be Jeremiah Smith. The player that fits the most needs at the most places and will most likely, given the historical data that we have, will be drafted number 1 overall, will be a defensive end. And it could very well be Dylan Stewart. And if you are South Carolina and you are trying to recruit, this goes without saying. If you're trying to recruit and go out and get, elite players, elite talent in general, right? In general, if you're trying to get 4 and 5 stars everywhere, now you not only have this track record of look how many players we put in we put 5 defensive players in the draft this year. We took 3 former 3 stars and turned them into top 50 picks on this team, in this defense, in this last year's draft, right? We developed like no other at South Carolina. And then you talk about getting, by the way, it's not just 3 stars that we're able to build up. Look at what we did with a 4-star quarterback, right, out of our backyard. Look what we did with a 5-star that we got from the Mid-Atlantic up there, and I think it's from D.C. I'm getting ahead of my skis here. And then be able to put them, former 5-stars, them into not only the first round, but number 1 overall picks. Both of those guys should be top 10 picks. And if you're able to start doing that and you have 2 back-to-back number 1s, I mean, you want to talk about a golden ticket of being able to go into any recruit's home and say, you're a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, come to Columbia. We'll develop you. You'll love the culture. You'll play in the best conference in the country. You'll play for a coach that everyone loves. You'll play in a defensive system. This is specific for defensive players with Clayton White that everyone loves and everyone eats and everyone produces in. And in 3 to 4 years, you will be in the National Football League. All right. Pepper is getting hungry. And producer Allie is about to get up here as we're recording. So we're going to wind this thing up. When we come back real quick, we're going to go over some housekeeping notes and some really good news that we got from another coach that finally got her due. I don't want to jinx it, I don't give any spoilers away, but another South Carolina Coach of the Year, the 4th different coach. I give away the spoiler. We'll be back in 2 seconds. Locked on Gamecocks continues next. All right, we're back with a really cool moment that was announced earlier today. D1 softball announced that Ashley Chastain Woodard, South Carolina's first year head softball coach, was named National Coach of the Year. That is an awesome congrats to her. Very well deserved. Awesome accomplishment. Like I said, more than anything, very, very well deserved. But what's even cooler about this, and I'm not trying to take anything away from her or shine any of the light on anyone else, because she deserves it. You go into your first year. I believe they won 44 games. Her rookie debut, I guess you could say, at South Carolina. Obviously, she was over at Charlotte earlier than that. Doing a great job on the recruiting trail, had 20-plus players that were in town over the weekend, being high school or transfer portal players, seeing the culture, seeing the stadium, seeing the atmosphere, and seeing what it would be like to play for the Gamecocks in the upcoming seasons if they decided to do so. Tremendous job out of her, but also this is becoming a thing. This is becoming a thing for coaches at this university. And you look over the last 4 years or last 2 years, and really in the last calendar year for a couple of them. But Dawn Staley was named the National Women's Basketball Coach of the Year in 2024. That's nothing new. She's done that a ton over her career. She also received the award. She's won the award 5 times in her 17 years in South Carolina, 2020, 22, 23, and 2024. Then you talk about the other coaches that have come in. Lamont Paris, SEC Coach of the Year, year 1, last season or 2 seasons ago, now as the men's basketball coach. And then Shane Beamer, of course, last year named the Paul Bear Bryant SEC Coach of the Year for the 2024 season. You have had 4 coaches in the last 2 years win conference or national coach of the year at this university, and you've done it in major sports. I've got goosebumps. That's sick. That's sick. So if Paul Maneri can get his blank together, that would be huge, because you should be able to compete across the board in every single season. And you talk about you hear all this stuff all the time from Tennessee fans or LSU or Auburn, Georgia, that love to throw out that phrase, the everything school. I'm not saying that South Carolina is an everything school yet, but I will tell you this. Being competitive in major sports during every single season is awesome. And it's great for the university. It's great for growing the university as a whole, because students want to come to that, and also growing the athletic department and those teams as a whole as well. So congratulations to Ashley Chastain, awarded as the National Coach of the Year from D1 softball. There you go. That is all for today's episode. I hope all of you have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday afternoon and night, or Thursday, whenever you're listening to this, really. And we'll be back with more Locked On Gamecocks tomorrow. Go Cox.